He saved an Apache girl, and 2 days later, her father arrived with 50 warriors. A lone rider found a wounded Apache girl beneath the burning desert sun, clutching a torn piece of fabric like it was her last breath. He carried her to safety, thinking it was the right thing to do, with no witnesses but the wind and the vultures above. But as campfires glowed on the second night, shadows formed on the ridge. 50 silent warriors, faces painted for judgment, not mercy. What price must be paid for saving a life? Who decides whether he is a hero or a thief? The whetstone scraped against a dull knife when the sound first reached him. A faint sob carried across the dry ravine like a ghost refusing to die. The wind smelled of dust and blood. Coyotes circled the far side of the ridge, tails low, eyes hungry, waiting for night to finish what daylight had begun. He paused, listening again, then rose from his small fire and followed the broken whispers, step by careful step. Behind a fallen mesquite tree, he found her, a young Apache girl curled on her side, breathing in sharp, painful shivers. Her dress was torn, feet bare, and her hands clutched a piece of red cloth torn from someone else's clothing. She didn't beg. She didn't scream. She simply turned her face to the dirt, as if life had already walked away and she was trying to follow. He knelt slowly, letting his shadow fall near her but not over her. "Water," she whispered, voice thin as spider silk. He placed his canteen beside her hand, not touching her skin, giving her the choice to trust or refuse. She reached for it, fingers trembling, sipping like she feared it might vanish. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent, ashamed, and he noticed the marks on her wrists, rope burn, recent and severe. Thunder rolled somewhere far away, though no storm was in sight. He knew what people said: never interfere, never touch, never get involved. But leaving her meant feeding her to wolves, men, or fate, and he would not carry that weight. He lifted her carefully, wrapping her shoulders with his own coat before placing her on his horse, keeping his eyes low, a gesture of respect he hoped she understood. She watched him, not with fear, but with the heavy calm of someone who had seen too much to be startled anymore. Before turning toward his small cabin miles away, he glanced once more at the sand, fresh hoofprints. Not one, many, and they were not heading away, they were circling back. The girl lay across the horse like a small bundle of bones, eyes half open, staring at nothing and everything, holding that torn red cloth with a grip stronger than her breath. The rider kept one hand close to her back, steadying her as the horse climbed the narrow slope. Dry leaves crackled under hooves, and the sound echoed like distant gunfire. "Stay awake," he whispered. "I'm trying," she answered. "Pain anywhere else? My chest and my feet. No one will harm you here. You don't know that." The rider said nothing, but his jaw tightened with silent promise. The small cabin appeared between two dead pines, old wood, leaning like it carried its own sorrow. Smoke rose faintly from a stone chimney, slow and thin, like a prayer that couldn't find heaven. He stopped the horse and slid down first, then lifted her gently, careful not to pull her arms. "Can you stand? I don't want to fall. I won't let you." He placed her feet on the ground. She flinched, sucking air through her teeth, but did not cry. She held onto his sleeve, not from trust, but because the earth felt unsafe. Inside the cabin, light came only from a single oil lamp. The walls were bare except for a wool blanket, a tin cup, a Bible with broken corners, and a rifle leaning quietly against the doorframe like a sleeping guard. He guided her to the cot near the fire, laying another blanket beneath her so the fabric wouldn't scrape her skin. "Is anyone coming for you?" he asked. She looked away. Silence. A silence that spoke of things no child should ever answer. He brought warm water in a metal bowl, placing it near her feet. "I need to see the cuts. They're ugly. We don't judge wounds here." She lowered her eyes, then nodded once. When he removed the cloth around her ankles, small blisters and dried blood covered her skin. Some wounds were fresh, others older, like she had walked far before someone tied her down. He washed slowly, never rushing, pausing each time she held her breath. "Why did you help me?" she whispered. "You were alone." "That's not a reason. It is for me." She stared at the fire, as if she could hear voices no one else could. "They'll say you stole me," she murmured. "Did I? No. But they'll say it." "Who?" "My people. Will they ask questions first?" "No." He kept his face still, hiding the chill running through him. The girl drank from the tin cup, hands trembling less than before. The pain in her feet eased, though fear still wrapped her chest like rope. Outside, the wind shifted. Something metallic clinked in the distance. Not a coyote, not a fence, not a falling tool. He stiffened. The girl heard it too and gripped the blanket. "Did you hear that?" "Yes." "What was it?" "Not sure yet." He blew out the lamp, leaving only firelight to guard the room. "Are we safe here?" she asked. "For tonight, yes." "You didn't sound sure." "Safer than out there." She closed her eyes, and tears slid quietly over her cheeks. "I didn't run away," she whispered. "I believe you. They took me." "Who?" "Men with rope, not from my tribe." He leaned closer. "Why?" "They wanted proof." "Proof of what?" "That my people would come." His breath caught. He spoke slowly, choosing words like stepping stones across a river. "Do you think they followed you?" "They don't need to track me." "Why?" "They already know where I am." "How?" She lifted her hand and pointed to the old chimney stones outside the window. "There's paint on the back side. Red paint. 3 marks." He froze. "You saw it when we arrived?" "Yeah. How?" "I wasn't fully asleep." "What do the marks mean?" She swallowed hard, eyes wide and shining in the firelight. "It means they claimed this ground before you ever built here. And they watch it still." The wind outside stopped completely. Not slowed, not faded. Stopped, as if the entire night was holding its breath. Then a deep, hollow drumbeat rolled across the hills. One single beat. Not thunder, not echo. A message. She grabbed his wrist with sudden strength. "They are already close, and they are not coming to talk." The fire crackled between them, but the room felt cold. The rider stepped toward the door, pressing his palm against the rough wood as if it could tell him what waited outside. The girl kept her eyes locked on the window, breathing fast but silent. "You sure it was 3 marks?" he asked. "Yes." "You know their meaning?" "Yes." "Tell me." "It means watched, taken, judged." "That's not good." "It's worse than you think." He checked the rifle near the wall, not lifting it, just making sure it was there. "Why put their mark on my chimney?" he asked. "To warn any outsider who stayed here?" "I never saw it." "You didn't know where to look." He paced once, slow, thinking. "Did they see us ride here?" "Yes." "You seem certain." "They watch from places you don't see." He leaned closer, speaking low. "Are they coming to harm me? Or take you?" "Both. If they believe you broke our code. I saved you. They don't measure intent, only action." He held his breath. "Is there a way to speak with them?" he asked. "Yes." "How?" "You must show respect." "I did." "Not to me, to them." "How?" "You must ask permission." "From who?" "From the one who wears the white paint across his eyes." He stared at her, unsure whether fear or disbelief weighed heavier. "You know the leader?" he asked. "I know his paint." "What does it mean?" "Memory of the dead." The rider swallowed hard, eyes shifting toward the dark window. "You said they took you for proof," he whispered. "Yes." "Proof of what?" "That our people would come if I was harmed." His voice dropped deeper. "And if they think I harmed you?" "They strike without words." He rubbed his forehead, breath uneven, then knelt beside her so they were eye level. "Listen," he said softly. "I mean no disrespect, but I can't just hand you over to whoever claims you." Her voice cracked, barely louder than the fire. "I don't want to go." "Then stay," he whispered. "They won't allow it." "Why?" "You're not one of us." He clenched his jaw. "Can I earn a place?" "No, not quickly." "How long?" "Seasons." He exhaled sharply. "Then, what do we do tonight?" She looked at the fire, not him. "We wait." "I don't like waiting." "No one does." Before a storm. He stood and pulled a heavy blanket from a shelf, laying it closer to the fire for warmth. She touched the edge of it, surprised by how soft it was compared to the dirt she had slept on before. "You treated my wounds," she whispered. "Anyone would." "No, not anyone." He didn't reply. Outside, the drums sounded again, 2 beats this time, slower, deeper, like a heart being counted before judgment. "What does 2 mean?" he asked. "Distance closing." He glanced around the cabin, searching for something useful. "We have water, food, and a barricade," he said. "None of that matters." "It matters to me." She pointed at the ceiling near the chimney cutout. "There's smoke vent above. They used to signal through it long ago." He stepped onto a small stool and examined the stones. Something thin had been wedged between them, a folded leaf, dried and pressed. He pulled it loose. "What is it?" she asked. He carefully unfolded it. Inside, written with ash and clay, were 3 small symbols: hand, fire, child. "What do these mean?" he asked. "Taken by hand, healed by fire, child protected." "That sounds good." "No. Why not?" "It's not praise. It's declaration." "Declaration of what?" "That you changed my fate." He stared. "Is that wrong?" "In our law, only the chief decides fate. And they think I replaced him." "Yes." "Then what are they coming to do?" She swallowed, voice shaking. "To restore balance." He stepped back, breath uneven. "What if I speak to them?" he said. "They won't hear you." "I have to try." "They'll test you." "How?" "By asking you what I am worth." He paused a long moment. "And if I say the wrong thing?" "You won't live long enough to change your answer." The drums stopped. The night fell silent again. Too silent. Then a single, sharp whistle cut through the darkness. Not close, not far, like a thread pulled tight between worlds. She looked at him, eyes wide, voice trembling for the first time. "They're not circling anymore." What changed? They chose a direction. He grabbed his coat and moved toward the door. "Tell me what that means," he whispered. She didn't blink. "It means they already know where you stand." The rider's hand rested on the doorframe, fingers tense, sensing the weight of the night pressing against the wood. The girl watched him from the cot, eyes wide but not pleading. She didn't ask him to stay. She also didn't ask him to go. She simply waited, like someone who already understood how stories could end. "You don't fear them," he whispered. "I fear what they must do." "What does that mean?" "They follow law, not heart. But you're a child." "That changes nothing." He stared at her, studying her face, the dried dirt on her cheeks, the cracked lips, the strength still hiding in her eyes. "You spoke of balance," he said. "Yes. How is it restored?" "Through return or through cost." "Explain." "If I return, they breathe again. And if you don't, they take breath from something equal." He tightened his jaw. "I won't let harm come to you." "You don't choose." "I choose my actions." "They choose the meaning." He lowered himself onto the stool near the fire, leaning forward. "There must be another path," he whispered. "There is one." "Then tell me." She hesitated, eyes flickering like wavering flame. "But you won't like it." "Say it." "You must show them you're willing to give up something you value." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "You must offer what proves your heart, not just your hands." "Like what?" "Land, blood, oath, or freedom." "What kind of freedom?" "Mine." He stared at her, silence pressing thick between words. "You want to leave?" "No." "Then why say it?" "Because truth doesn't care what we want." He stood slowly and stepped toward the window, pushing aside a strip of rough hide. The moonlight carried dust, shadows shifting near the tree line. He spoke without turning. "Tell me their leader," he said. "You don't want his name. I need to know who I face. His name is not spoken outside our fire." "Then speak his title." She took a long breath. "He is called Silent Branch." "Why that name?" "He bends hope but never breaks." "And he is feared." "No. Respected." "What makes him strong?" "He listens longer than others breathe." He turned to look at her. "And he is your—" She shook her head quickly. "Do not ask." He paused. "Is he coming tonight?" "If not him, his oath man." "What is an oath man?" The one who speaks before the chief. And his purpose? To judge truth and lie with the same tongue. He reached for the rifle, but she shook her head. No weapons. You said they won't listen. They won't listen if you speak with iron in your hand. So I leave it here. Yes. And if they rush me, you hold words, not steel. He exhaled sharply. You believe they're close? No. Then why this warning? They are already here. A faint sound drifted through the wall, a soft tap, barely noticeable, like a fingertip on bark. Then another, not random, not wind, a pattern. The rider stepped back, lips parting slightly. That's no animal, he whispered. No. What is it? Ask yourself. He held his breath, counting the taps. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. Is that a message? He asked. Yes. What does it say? She listened, eyes unfocused, like reading invisible smoke. It says, "We see you." The rider felt cold crawl up his spine. Are they warning? He asked. No. Then what? They are asking. Asking what? If your cabin is a prison or a shelter. He stepped away from the door, unsettled. Why would they ask that? He whispered. She slowly lifted the torn red cloth in her hands, opening it fully for the first time. On the underside, the fabric revealed 2 black vertical lines drawn with charcoal. These marks decide everything, she said. What do they mean? 1 line means taken, and 2, held. He stared. They think I kidnapped you. Yes. Then how do I prove otherwise? You must let them see your choice, not mine. And what is my choice? She looked into his eyes, voice barely a breath. You must open the door. Before he could speak, the tapping stopped. Not faded, cut clean. Then a low male voice spoke through the darkness, calm, steady, close enough to touch the wood. Step outside alone. The rider stood frozen, hand hovering near the latch, breath tight in his chest. The firelight behind him swayed with the draft slipping through the cracks. The girl watched him without blinking, hands gripping the blanket like it could anchor her to the living world. You heard him, she whispered. I did. You must answer. I'm not ready. No one ever is. He swallowed, throat dry. If I open this door, he whispered, I stand alone. Yes. And if I don't, they break it. He looked at the rifle again. They'll see fear, not strength, she warned. I'm not afraid. You are. He didn't deny it. A stillness settled, deep and heavy, like the moment before a winter storm when all birds hide and even the mountains listen. The rider stepped forward, placing his palm on the wood. I go alone, he said. Yes. You stay behind me. I will. You speak only if I ask. I won't speak unless needed. He hesitated, then asked softly, Will they hurt you if I fail? Not at first. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, then pulled the latch slowly. The door opened with a tired creak that sounded louder than thunder in the silent night. Cold air swept inside, blowing dust around their feet. Outside, the world seemed carved from shadow and moonlight. No horses in sight, no torches, no movement except slow drifting fog hugging the ground. A single figure stood 5 paces away, tall and still, wrapped in a dark hide cloak painted with white ash symbols. His face was calm, stern but not cruel, eyes painted with a thin black line across his brow. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not raise his voice. He simply spoke. You brought her here. The rider stepped out, closing the door halfway behind him. She was hurt, he replied. You lifted her. Yes. You gave water. Yes. You washed her wounds. Yes. You covered her with your cloth. Yes. You made a shelter for her body. Yes. The tall figure nodded once, as if marking each answer like a ledger. Then, by our law, he said quietly, you claimed what you touched. The rider froze. I made no claim, he answered. What you believe matters little. I do not own her. Our law does not speak of ownership. Then what does it speak of? Duty. The rider's voice lowered. And if I refuse duty? The figure stepped closer, slow and deliberate. Then balance must be restored another way. The rider clenched his fists. She was dying, he said. And now she lives, the figure replied. That is why we came. The rider tried to read the man's eyes, but they held no anger, only unshakable certainty. What do you want from me? He asked. A truth that cannot break. What truth? Why did you help her? The rider hesitated, searching inside himself. I saw someone who needed help. That is a reason for a passerby. He said nothing. Why risk trouble with our people? The figure asked. She deserved a chance. That is a reason for a teacher. Again he was silent. Why give your water? She needed it more. That is a reason for a brother. He looked away, unsettled. Why carry her? She could not walk. That is a reason for a father. He shook his head quickly. No, I am not that. The man's voice grew softer, more dangerous. You touched her like blood touches blood. I acted out of mercy. The man leaned forward, whispering like wind through dry grass. Mercy always has a price. Inside the cabin, the girl pressed her hand over her mouth to stop a sob. She was listening. The man stepped back one pace. I am Oath Man, he announced. I speak before judgment. On the third question, you cannot lie. The rider stiffened. What question? He asked. It has not yet been spoken. He raised one hand, palm open, and the night seemed to bend around his words. When I ask, he said, you will answer with your deepest truth. If your heart lies, the earth will decide. The rider swallowed hard. What happens if my truth is wrong? He whispered. The Oath Man's eyes did not blink. Then she returns, he said, and you do not. The rider held his breath as the Oath Man lowered his raised hand. Moonlight revealed faint white dust on his knuckles, as if he had walked through memory rather than soil. Behind the cabin door, the girl listened with her eyes closed, every word cutting deeper than the wounds on her feet. The Oath Man spoke first. You have said she lives. Yes. You have said you touched her. Yes. You have said you acted with mercy. Yes. He paused, letting the night settle like a verdict around them. Before I ask her, he said softly, you may speak anything you wish. The rider shook his head. I have nothing to add. You are certain? Yes. Speak with full heart, not quick mouth. The rider hesitated, then asked, what happens if I answer with fear? Fear does not anger us. Then what does? False honor. The rider looked toward the cabin window, seeing only faint orange flickers behind the hide curtain. He spoke quietly. I did not harm her. That is not the question. I did not claim her. That is not the question. Then what is it? You will hear when truth needs breath. He stepped closer, stopping only 2 paces away. You took her from open ground to private walls. Why? She was dying. She still breathes. Because I helped. You gave more than help. The rider frowned. What did I give? A new path. That wasn't my choice. But it was your act. The rider felt the earth under his boots shift, not physically, but in meaning. I saved her life, he said. That is not small. I do not regret it. That is not answer enough. The Oath Man exhaled through his nose slowly, as if deciding whether words or silence would teach more. He finally nodded once. It is time, he said. Ask, the rider replied. The Oath Man lowered his head slightly, voice steady as carved stone. When you saw her broken, did you rescue her to stop her death? Yes. Or did you rescue her because you feared living alone with your own silence? The rider froze, breath caught mid-chest. The Oath Man didn't blink. Answer with full heart, he whispered. No shape words. No half-truth. The rider stared at the ground, shoulders rising and falling with unsteady breath. Inside the cabin, the girl covered her mouth again. Finally, he spoke. I could not walk away again. The Oath Man leaned forward. Again? Yes. You have left another before. Yes. Who? I won't speak her story. You must. No. You must. The rider's voice cracked. It was a woman on the trail, far east. Did she die? I don't know. You think she did? Yes. You left because you feared dying with her. Yes. The Oath Man straightened. Then you did not lift this girl only for mercy. The rider lowered his head. I lifted her because I could not bear another failure. The oathman placed his hand over his chest. Truth given. The rider looked up, confused. Is that wrong? He asked. Truth is not wrong. Then why judge? We do not judge truth. What do you judge? Duty born from truth. The rider blinked, not understanding. The oathman spoke slowly. If you lifted her only to save her body, we would take her. If you lifted her only to save your memory, we would take her. But you lifted her to save the earth beneath your own future steps. He placed his hand on the ground. You asked your heart a question in silence. The answer became action, and action becomes bond. The rider whispered, What bond? You carry duty now. Duty to who? To both paths, yours and hers. He paused, voice firm. You cannot leave her, and she cannot stay only as a burden. The rider stared. What must I do? You choose. That tells me nothing. Yes. Choice never tells. Choice reveals. He turned slightly, eyes shifting toward the woods. My people already wait for answer. What answer? Whether you walk beside her or place her outside your door. The rider felt his chest tighten. And if I choose wrong, there is no wrong path. Then what? There is only price. The wind rose suddenly, carrying distant hoof sounds. Not many, not few, but steady. The oathman looked past the cabin and whispered, They have moved. The rider's voice trembled. Moved where? He slowly raised his chin. Toward your well, not your door. The rider froze. My water. Yes. Why? To see if you share life, or guard it. What happens when they reach it? That depends on what they hear next. He turned fully toward the rider, voice low as thunder buried in sand. Call to her. The rider's pulse hammered. For what? Call her to choose if she stands at your side. The night felt suddenly breathless. Inside the cabin, she rose slowly, barefoot, trembling, not from weakness, but from knowing there are moments that shape entire lifetimes. The oathman's voice cut the silence. Call her. Now. The rider stood in the doorway, heart pounding harder than the distant hooves. The oathman waited like carved stone, neither pushing nor rushing, only allowing silence to become its own kind of fire. Inside the cabin, the girl stood near the cot, breathing unsteadily, eyes fixed on the half-open door. He turned his head toward her, voice low. Come stand here. She didn't move. You heard him, he said. Yes. Then step forward. She looked at the floor. They will watch my feet and not my face. Then walk. Her hands trembled at her sides. What if my step becomes your price? She whispered. That is mine to carry. And what if I stay behind? That is yours to explain. The fire crackled once, as if the flame itself held opinion. She took one slow breath, then answered without lifting her head. Say the words. What words? Ask me, not order me. He swallowed. Will you stand beside me? She closed her eyes. Ask like heart, not law. He tried again, softer. Do you want to stand with me? She lifted her head, eyes wet but sharp. Yes. He extended his hand, slow, open. Then come. She didn't reach for his palm. She stepped past it, barefoot, weak legs shaking but refusing the cot's memory. She crossed the threshold and stood beside him beneath the cold night. The oathman watched carefully, eyes narrowing just a fraction. She came, the rider said. She walked, the oathman replied. That is answer. She spoke then, voice steady. I walked by myself. The oathman nodded once. Good. The rider glanced toward the well at the far edge of the clearing. Moonlight reflected off the stone rim. Movement shifted near it. Silhouettes, low and still, like wolves waiting for reason to run. The oathman spoke again. Now speak second truth, he ordered. The rider frowned. I answered your question. And now answer hers. He looked at the girl. What question? He asked. She stepped one pace closer to the firelight drifting out the door. "When you saved me," she whispered, "did you want me safe for me, or safe so you could sleep again?" The rider's breath faltered. "That question isn't fair." "No question born from pain is easy." He looked away, jaw tense. "I didn't want to lose someone again," he said. "That speaks of you," she answered. He inhaled, eyes tightening. "But I wanted you to breathe." "That speaks of both." The Oathman raised a hand slightly. "Truth shared, not owned." The rider turned to the Oathman. "What now?" he asked. "You must show life, not speak it." "How?" "Water." The rider's eyes widened. "My well?" "Yes. And if they think I'm offering to buy safety, they will know." "How?" "Water carries no lies." The rider's voice lowered. "And if I refuse, then they drink without you and decide without you." Wind rustled the dead grass near the cabin steps. The girl looked toward the well, fear tightening her fingers. "They wait for sign," she whispered. The rider stepped forward, determination rising like heat from forged iron. "I will go," he said. The Oathman added, "You walk alone." The girl suddenly grabbed his sleeve. "No," she whispered. He looked at her. "I must. They will surround you. I will not raise a hand. They might." He cupped her upper arm gently, whispering, "You walked for me. Now I walk for you." She didn't let go until her hand slipped without strength. He turned and headed toward the well, boots sinking slightly into cold dust. Each step felt like it cracked something old inside him. The Oathman didn't follow. He simply watched, arms at his sides, like a judge waiting for gravity to pass sentence. Halfway to the well, voices rose, not loud, not angry, a low humming sound, like breath turned into warning. Dark silhouettes straightened, forming a half circle near the stones. The rider stopped 3 paces away. "I offer no harm," he said. The humming stopped instantly. One voice from the shadows replied, "Show purpose." The rider reached toward the stone rim slowly, careful to show empty hands. "I share what keeps life." He lowered the wooden bucket, rope whispering against rough stone. When it reached water, he paused, then pulled it up slowly, arms shaking from weight and meaning. Moonlight reflected across the surface like liquid silver. He set the bucket between them and stepped back 1 full pace. "Drink if you wish," he said. No one moved. Then the girl took a step forward, barefoot, unafraid, toward the warriors. The Oathman did not stop her. The rider whispered desperately, "What are you doing?" She answered without turning, "Water is not his gift. Water is Earth's gift. But choice is mine." She reached for the bucket handle. Several silhouettes shifted, hands tightening on spears, unsure whether she was blessing or betraying. She lifted the bucket barely, arms trembling. "If I drink," she said softly, "they will ask why." She lowered it. "If they drink," she continued, "they will ask from who?" Wind died, no one breathed. Then she whispered a line no one expected. "But if we drink together, the question changes." Silence snapped tight. The Oathman stepped forward slowly, his face unreadable. He spoke only 2 words. "Then prove." The girl stood frozen, arms trembling around the bucket handle, the moon drawing pale silver across her hair. The warriors remained still, faces hidden by shadow, but the weight of their silence pressed harder than any drawn bow. Her breath quivered, but her eyes never left the water's surface. The rider whispered from behind, "You don't have to do this." She didn't turn. "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because they know my voice, but they don't know my choice." The Oathman stepped forward, cloak brushing the dust. "You speak brave words." She tightened her grip. "Not brave, unnecessary." He studied her for a long moment. "If you drink first," he said, "they will believe you submit." She swallowed. "And if they drink first, they will say you are claimed." Her fingers shook harder. "And if we drink together?" The Oathman looked toward the warrior circle. "That has never been done." She lifted her chin. "Then let it be new." The rider took 1 slow step closer. "I will drink with you," he said. She whispered sharply, "No." "Why?" "You are already judged." "Then let me balance." Your balance is not mine. He clenched his jaw. I lifted you. I carried you. I gave water. She faced him, eyes shining. You gave life. But life must walk alone until invited. The oath man raised his hand slightly. Decide before fear becomes excuse. She breathed once, deep and steady, then lifted the bucket higher. Step forward, she said to the shadows. No one moved. Step, she repeated. A single warrior closest to her shifted 1 foot, then stopped, waiting for order. Another followed with the same hesitant half-step. She understood. They wait for you, she whispered. The oath man's jaw tightened. I do not drink with those who cross law. She slowly lowered the bucket halfway. Then drink as law, she said, not as men. A breeze swept across the clearing, carrying dust like drifting memory. The oath man looked into the water, and for the first time, hesitation flickered in his eyes. The rider broke the silence. What does water mean to your people? He asked. The oath man answered slowly. It remembers. Remembers what? Every hand that touched the rope. The rider whispered. Then let it remember truth. The oath man studied him, then spoke to the girl. Tell me why you wish to drink together. She whispered. Because I am more than pain, and he is more than accident. The oath man turned his face slightly toward the warriors. Step closer, he commanded. They obeyed instantly, tightening the half-circle around girl and rider, breath visible in the moonlight. The oath man pointed to the bucket. Lift it with 2 hands, he instructed. She raised it higher, shoulders shaking with strain. The rider moved as if to help, but she whispered sharply, No hands but mine. The oath man waited until she steadied. When I say, he said, you take first sip, but do not swallow. She nodded. Then I will take mine, and do not swallow. She nodded again. And then, he continued, we swallow as one. Her voice was barely air. I understand. The rider whispered with urgency, Your body is weak. This could hurt you. She answered, My spirit is heavier than water. The oath man lowered his head. Begin. She brought the bucket to her lips and took a small sip, not swallowing. Her eyes watered from the effort, but she held it. The oath man stepped forward, lowered his face to the edge, and took his sip, holding it the same way. A long silence followed. The rider whispered, Now. The oath man whispered back. No voice. Only breath. He lifted 2 fingers. The signal. Together. They swallowed. The warriors exhaled like one body. But the night didn't ease. It grew heavier. The girl's knees buckled. The rider rushed forward, catching her before the bucket spilled. Easy, he whispered. Her body shook like chilled wire, eyes wide. I'm fine. The oath man studied her. You honored law, he said, but law is not finished. The rider snapped. She drank with you. What else do you want? The oath man answered like winter itself. Water shows unity. Now fire must show truth. The rider stepped back. What fire? The oath man slowly turned toward the cabin and pointed at the chimney. Where the old mark waits. A cold shiver rippled through the girl. They will burn it, she whispered. The oath man corrected her. No, you will decide if it burns. The rider stared in disbelief. You want her to choose her own fate? The oath man's eyes hardened. No, she must choose yours. The rider felt the ground shift beneath meaning, not beneath dust. The girl, still held upright by his arms, steadied her breath, though her knees shook like small branches in winter wind. The oath man lowered his hood slightly, revealing only his eyes, not angry, not triumphant, only certain. He spoke first. The water joins hearts, he said, but fire reveals intent. The rider squared his shoulders. Explain your meaning. No, the oath man replied. You discover meaning only through action. The girl whispered, What mark waits inside the cabin? The oath man answered, The cloth with 2 lines. The girl blinked slowly. That was not mine. No, he said, but you carried it. It marked me, she whispered. It judged you, he corrected. The rider stepped slightly in front of her. You said she must choose my fate. Yes. How is that fair? Fairness is not our law, balance is our law. The rider took a long breath. What must she do? Speak clearly. The Oathman turned his head toward the cabin door. Inside, under the fire shelf, he said, rests a small clay pot sealed with pitch. The rider frowned. I didn't see it. You looked with eyes, not with purpose. The girl gazed toward the window, remembering something. I smelled pitch, she whispered. Yes, he replied. That pot holds marking ash. The rider asked, what kind of marking? The Oathman answered, the kind that decides who belongs where. The girl's voice weakened. And what must I do? The Oathman spoke calmly. You will place that ash on either hymns or on the cabin door. She stared at him, horrified. What do the choices mean? He answered with slow certainty. A mark on him means he walks with you. A mark on the door means you return with us. The rider whispered, and if she refuses both, then the earth will choose, he said. How? The rider demanded. You will see, he replied. Wind pressed dust against their boots. No warrior moved. No wolf howled. No insect dared speak. The rider turned to the girl. You don't have to do this. She shook her head once. Not choosing is still a choice. He clenched his fists. This isn't right, she whispered. Right is not always offered. The Oathman spoke again. Retrieve the pot. The rider answered. She is weak. I'll get it. The Oathman lifted one finger. No man retrieves judgment. The girl inhaled like cold water. Then I will walk. The rider tried to support her, but the Oathman blocked him with a single raised palm. No touch. She walks under her own spirit. The girl stood alone, breath shaking, but not collapsing. She looked up at the rider. If I fall, she whispered, don't lift me. He whispered back, I can't watch you fall. You must, she said. Her first step was small but steady. The second, slow but sure. Her bare foot dragged slightly on the third, but she didn't cry or call for help. She reached the cabin door, paused, and touched the wood with her fingertips. I enter alone, she said. Enter, the Oathman replied. She slipped inside, and the door closed behind her with a soft, heavy sound like memory shutting someone out. The rider wanted to rush forward. What if she collapses? She won't, the Oathman answered. You can't know that. I know her spirit weighs more than her pain. Inside the cabin, faint sounds shifted, a foot dragging, a breath catching, a hand searching the fire shelf. She whispered something, too quiet to understand. Then, the sound of clay tapping stone. She had found it. The silence outside thickened. After several heartbeats, the door opened again. She stood holding the small clay pot in both hands, her arms trembling, but her eyes focused. She walked back toward them slowly, stopping 3 paces away. The Oathman spoke, You now command the next act. She looked at the rider first. Will you walk with me? If marked. Yes. Even if they never accept you. Yes. Even if the earth takes price. Yes. She turned to the Oathman. If I mark the door, I return. Yes. And he lives? Yes. And the path ends? No, he replied. Paths never end. They only change ground. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she didn't blink them away. I don't know where I belong, she whispered. The Oathman said, Then choose where you will begin. She looked down at the pot. Her hands shook harder. She pulled the stopper free. A small puff of dark ash rose, carried by the wind like lost memory. The Oathman lowered his voice. Speak your decision aloud. She raised her hand, index finger dipped into ash, breath trembling, caught between 2 worlds and 2 hearts. She whispered, I choose. A sudden horn call echoed from the trees, not near, not far, but commanding. Every warrior snapped to attention. The Oathman's eyes widened, not with anger, but with change. He whispered, That is not my signal. The girl froze, finger still dipped in ash. The rider stepped closer, unsure if he should shield her or surrender. The Oathman stiffened for the first time since arriving, his eyes narrowing toward the tree line. That horn, the rider whispered, means trouble. The Oathman answered without turning. It means the circle has changed. The girl lowered her hand, ash falling like soft black snow. Who gave that call? She asked. The Oathman spoke with slow caution. A higher voice. The rider looked toward the woods. Higher than you? Yes. A shadow appeared between the trees, not rushing, not hiding, simply approaching with purpose. The warriors around the well shifted, forming two uneven lines, not defensive yet, but uncertain. The Oathman whispered to himself, not for them. He was not meant to come tonight. The girl trembled. He knows I live. Yes, the rider whispered sharply. Who is he? The Oathman finally answered. The Keeper of Paths. The girl's eyes widened. He decides crossings. The rider frowned. What crossings? Hearts, homes, and hunted souls. The figure stepped closer, cloak long, stitched with rows of red-dyed thread like falling embers. No weapons were shown, but no one doubted he carried power heavier than steel. The Oathman straightened and spoke carefully. You honor our meeting, the Keeper replied, voice calm and steady. I honor the living. The girl whispered, He came for me. The Keeper turned toward her. I came for truth. The rider stepped forward. Truth has been spoken. Your truth, the Keeper said, and hers, the rider replied. The Keeper held up 3 fingers. There are 3 truths in any wound. The truth spoken, the truth feared, and the truth that waits. He lowered his hand. We have only heard 2. The girl held the clay pot tighter. What truth waits? The Keeper looked at her gently. The one you hide, even from yourself. Her breath shook. I hid nothing. His voice remained calm. You hid what your pain wanted, not what your spirit wanted. The rider whispered, What does that mean? The Keeper turned to him. Pain speaks very fast. Spirit speaks very slow. The Oathman spoke firmly. We began the ash choice. The Keeper nodded. I saw. Then let her finish. No, the Keeper said softly, because she was about to choose from fear. The girl's voice cracked. I was not afraid. You were, he answered. But you believed it was duty. She lowered her head. I didn't want him to pay. That is not the same as wanting to go with him. Silence dropped like cold rain. The rider closed his eyes, feeling the truth cut deeper than any blade. The Keeper stepped forward, voice never rising. We do not bind people with wounds. The Oathman asked, Then how do we bind? The Keeper answered, With direction. The girl whispered, I have none. The Keeper turned toward her fully, eyes steady and kind. Then we walk until direction appears. The rider suddenly stepped between them. She is weak. She cannot walk far. The Keeper faced him calmly. Then she will lean on spirit. She needs rest. She needs truth more. She could die. Life without direction is another kind of dying. The rider clenched his fists. You don't understand. The Keeper's voice shifted, a slight sternness entering. I understand loss more than you. The rider froze, stunned into silence. The girl finally spoke. What must I do? The Keeper answered. You will walk with me a short distance only, just beyond that rise. She looked toward the small slope past the well, a shadowed ridge under moonlight. The rider panicked. You can't take her away. The Keeper turned. I am not taking her, I am asking her to walk. The Oathman stepped closer, speaking privately. If she refuses, the Keeper replied, then she is still carrying fear, and fear always returns. He paused. If she walks and wisdom rises, if she stands, confusion rules. The girl swallowed hard. And if I fall? The Keeper whispered, then I will lift you, because lifting is not claiming. The rider looked at the girl, desperate. Don't go if you feel forced. She touched his arm gently. I don't feel forced. He searched her eyes. Then what do you feel? She answered with a trembling breath. I feel unfinished. The Keeper nodded once. That is the true beginning. The Oathman opened the circle. The Keeper extended his hand, not to pull, not to lead, only to show a path. She walked forward slowly, barefoot, ash still on her fingertip, clay pot held to her chest. She whispered to the rider as she passed, Do not follow. He whispered back, I can't watch you disappear." She looked into his eyes. "You won't." Then she stepped beyond the well toward the ridge, following the keeper, moonlight guiding each fragile footprint. The Oathman turned to the rider. "Wait here. For how long?" "For whatever comes back." The rider stared at the ridge, heart heavy, breath thin. Then, from beyond the ridgeline, a single cry echoed. Not pain, not fear. Something else entirely. The Oathman whispered. That was not her voice. The rider stepped forward, breath caught, eyes locked on the ridge. The Oathman raised his arm, blocking him again. "Hold," he said. "That wasn't her voice," the rider insisted. "Hold," the Oathman repeated. "Firmer." The rider clenched his teeth. She could be hurt. "She is not alone," the Oathman replied. The rider whispered, "You mean the keeper?" "No," he said quietly. The cry belonged to someone else. The warriors near the well shifted uneasily, not fearful but alert, like men recognizing a message they hoped would never come again. The rider demanded, "Then who is out there?" The Oathman didn't answer. He scanned the ridge with careful focus, shoulders tensing, jaw tightening as if recognizing a pattern long buried. Another sound cracked across the night. Not a cry this time, but a voice calling a single word, one none of them expected. "Sister?" The rider froze. "She has family out there?" he whispered. The Oathman replied, "Paths do not all lead home, but some still cross." The rider's voice softened. "You knew this could happen. We knew it was not impossible. And you didn't tell her. She carried enough on her shoulders." Another call came. "Sister, answer." The rider turned sharply toward the Oathman. Why would they not tell her? The Oathman breathed heavily. Because her journey home was not only ours to decide. The rider whispered, "She has more than one people." The Oathman nodded once. "She may have more than one future." The rider stepped forward again. "I'm going to her." The Oathman didn't block him this time. "Walk, not run. Her choice is her heir. Do not steal it." The rider approached the ridge slowly, boots sinking into cool dust, heart pounding harder than hooves. As he climbed, the wind carried soft voices, one steady, one trembling. When he reached the top, he saw them. The girl, standing upright, clay pot still clutched. The keeper, standing to her side, calm and watchful. And opposite them, a young woman close to the girl's age, wearing different markings, different clothing, different stitching patterns, eyes full of tears and shock and hope woven together. The rider whispered, "Who is she?" The keeper turned slightly. Someone she thought was lost. The young woman on the ridge spoke with a trembling voice. "I searched for you. I never stopped." The girl stared, unable to speak, unable to breathe. The rider slowly descended toward them, stopping several paces back so his presence did not bend her choice. The girl finally whispered, "You were gone." "I was taken," the young woman replied, "but I lived, and I learned, and I walked back." The girl's voice cracked. "You have a place?" "Yes," she whispered, "and no place." "Both." She stepped closer. "I found people who shared bread, but not language, shelter, but not memory, kindness, but not history." The girl's eyes filled. "And now? Now I look for my own place, not one chosen by me." Silence hung like a held breath. The keeper spoke. "The earth grows crossroads quietly." The rider spoke gently. "She doesn't have to choose tonight." The keeper nodded. "Correct." The young woman added softly, "Choice made in fear is not choice." The girl lowered the clay pot. "I thought I had only two paths," she whispered. The keeper replied, "Two paths is a trap. Life has many trails." The young woman reached out her hand, not grabbing, not claiming, only offering. "If you walk with me, you won't be alone. But you won't be owned by anyone." The rider stepped closer, voice steady. "And if you walk with me, you won't owe me, ever." The girl looked at the keeper. "And if I walk alone?" He bowed his head. "Then you walk honest." The Oathman spoke from below the ridge. "We honor any path not taken from fear." Tears finally rolled down her cheeks. She whispered, "For the first time, I see more than 2 doors. She looked at her ash-covered finger, at the pot, at the ridge, at each of them. She whispered, "I am not anyone's answer," and let the clay pot fall. It hit stone, cracked, split. Ash drifted into the wind like dust breaking free from memory. Every warrior lowered his gaze, not in shame, not in anger, but in recognition. Then the girl inhaled, lifted her chin and whispered, "My path begins after sunrise." The keeper answered softly. Then we wait. But from the valley below, a new sound rose. Not horn, not cry, not chant, hoofbeats. Fast. Many. Approaching. Hoofbeats thundered closer, rolling through the valley like approaching judgment. Dust rose behind the ridge, glowing pale under moonlight. Every warrior shifted, gripping spear shafts, not to attack but to be ready for interpretation. The rider whispered, "That rhythm, not tribal." The oathman nodded slowly. "Steel saddles, government tack." The keeper narrowed his eyes. "Authority men ride with noise, not listening." The girl stood between worlds, ash still on her finger, breath held like a trapped bird. Figures burst from the darkness. 4 horses, lantern strapped to one saddle, reflector badge catching moonlight, long coats whipping behind them. Not raiders, not bounty men, law riders. The lead rider pulled up hard, horse rearing slightly before settling. A voice called out, "By order of territorial court, this property is under review." The rider from the cabin stepped forward. "This ground is mine." "Not yet settled," the lawman barked. "Boundary papers contested." The keeper spoke calmly. "This land holds no argument to us." The lawman turned sharply. "It does now." The girl's eyes widened. "Why now?" The lawman lifted a sealed envelope. "Filed 3 weeks back. Received today." The cabin rider frowned. "Who filed dispute?" The lawman opened the envelope slowly, reading, "Filed by claimant, West River Development and Grain." The rider whispered, "That's a company." The lawman nodded. "Her company with signatures." The keeper stepped forward. "This cabin stands by labor, not by ink." The lawman replied, "Law sees ink, not sweat." The oathman's voice dropped low. "Be careful with words." The lawman straightened in the saddle. "I speak for court, not myself." The girl stepped forward, voice trembling. "Why come at night?" The lawman answered, "Mail arrived late." "My orders say urgent." The rider of the cabin asked, "What do they want?" The lawman read from the page, "Ground for road, water rights for trade, and removal of all squatters." The rider stepped forward, furious. "I built that well. With my hands." The lawman didn't blink. "Court will decide." The keeper spoke quietly. "You bring paper for land, but ignore people on land." The lawman turned toward him. "I don't decide worth." "I deliver notice." The oathman asked, "What action follows notice?" "Inspection," the lawman answered, "then removal if ordered." The rider whispered, "When?" "Sunrise," the lawman said. "Inspection must see truth." The girl stepped forward again, voice cracking. "And what of me?" All eyes shifted. The lawman took a slow breath. "We also carry report of a missing young girl." The rider froze. The keeper stiffened. The oathman narrowed his eyes. The lawman unfolded a second sheet. "Description matches. Female, young, injured. Last seen near freight line." The rider whispered, "That's her." The lawman read more. "Guard station claims possible abduction." The girl gasped, "No." "I ran." The lawman raised a hand. "I'm not judge. I transport reports." The girl stepped closer. "I was hurt. He helped me." The lawman wrote notes. "Your word matters, but must be sworn." The rider spoke firmly. "I didn't take her." "That isn't mine to prove," the lawman replied. The keeper addressed the lawman directly. "She stands between paths. Do not force one." The lawman holstered his notebook. "Sunrise at Riverbend, all answers sworn." The rider stepped forward. "She's not strong enough," the lawman answered. "Court waits for truth, not strength." The oathman spoke quietly. "Truth needs strength." The lawman turned his horse. Then gather it fast. He paused, looking back once. Inspection includes well, roof and record of care. He glanced toward the girl, and her testimony. Then he rode off into darkness. His men followed, dust trailing like quiet threat. Silence returned, heavier than before. The girl looked at the ash still on her fingertip. "First I choose my life," she whispered. "Now I must defend it." The rider touched her shoulder gently. "We face it together." She shook her head. "No." He froze. "I speak alone," she continued. "If I speak with anyone beside me, they will think I echo." The keeper nodded. "This is not trial of crime. It is trial of voice," the oathman added, "and voice grows only when alone." The rider whispered, "You could be taken." She closed her eyes. Better taken by truth than held by fear. Then she turned toward the cabin, bare feet quiet, shadow long, decision forming like sunrise behind storm. At the doorway she paused. Tomorrow, someone loses something. No one argued. No one offered comfort, because everyone knew she was right. Dawn began as a grey bruise on the horizon, not yet light, not still night. The girl sat inside the cabin, back against the wall, knees pulled close, staring at the dying embers like they held a map she couldn't read. Outside, men prepared without speaking. No weapons drawn, no anger shown, only quiet, heavy breath. The rider knocked on the door frame, not entering. "You should rest." "I can't. You'll need strength. I'll need honesty more." He leaned against the frame. "You're scared." "Yes. So am I." She looked up. "Then don't stand behind me." He nodded. "I'll stand near, not above." They stayed silent, the fire popping once like a distant gunshot. A low call echoed outside. "It's time," the keeper said. The girl rose slowly, pain in every step, but not hesitation. She tied a small strip of cloth around her wrist. Nothing ceremonial, nothing sacred, simply a reminder that her body still belonged to her. She stepped outside. The oathman, the keeper, the rider, and 2 warriors followed her toward the river bend, where the lawriders waited near the water's edge. The sun was just a knife-thin line cutting the dark. The lead lawman dismounted, papers tucked under his arm. "You came willingly," he said. "Yes," she replied. "That matters." He motioned to a flat rock. "Stand here, speak clear, no one else answers." The rider whispered, "You don't stand alone." She held up her hand. "I speak alone." He stopped. The oathman and keeper stood back, giving her a wide space, not abandoning her, respecting distance. The lawman cleared his throat. "We take 3 questions. Your answers guide record. Do you understand?" "Yes." "And you speak without pressure?" "Yes." "Ready?" She swallowed. "Yes." The lawman asked the first question. "Did this man take you without your will?" "No." "Did he stop you from returning to where you came?" "No." "Did he harm or frighten you for control?" She shook her head. "No. He saved me." The lawman wrote slowly. "Those answers help, but report claims trauma may block truth." She steadied her breath. "My wounds came before him." "Where?" "I don't know the place. I only remember running." The lawman lowered the paper. Then the second part. "Not about him, about you." She blinked. "Me?" "Yes. Law must know if you need care, or freedom, or guardianship." She stiffened. "I choose freedom." "You're young," he replied. "You're wounded. Freedom hurts sometimes." "That's not measure," he said. She looked him in the eyes. "Then what is—" "Direction." She nodded slowly. "I have one." "Which?" She pointed, not at the cabin, not at the tribe, not at the road. She pointed to herself. "My direction begins here, with my feet, not someone else's." The lawman paused, finally seeing more than case file ink. "That answer has weight." He folded the first paper, then opened the second, the land dispute. "This ground is contested," he said. The rider stepped forward. "It's my work." "Paper doesn't show that." The keeper spoke calmly. "He built with hands." "Hands don't sign deeds," the lawman replied. The girl suddenly interrupted. Then record mine. All men turned to her. What? The lawman asked. Record that he cared, not claimed. The rider whispered, You don't have to defend me. She shook her head. I'm not defending you. I'm defending truth. The lawman looked at her differently now, as if weighing her words instead of her age. He lifted the final sheet, the decision. At sunrise full, I must choose recommendation, she whispered. You don't choose fate, just record it. He considered that. The keeper spoke softly. Law writes pages, people write paths. The oathman added, Both should hold ink. The lawman drew a slow breath. Then I ask final question. He turned to the girl. Where do you choose to go when we leave? Her lips trembled, not with fear, with real thought. Everyone held breath, not to influence her. She spoke slowly, voice like steady fire. I will not return where I bled. I will not stay where I moaned. I will walk to a place I haven't seen yet. The lawman asked, Alone? She considered. Maybe to start, maybe not forever. The lawman folded all papers, tightly, decisively, then sealed them without writing more. The rider whispered, What does that mean? The lawman mounted his horse. It means she answered for herself. He looked directly at her. Fag, and that changes everything. A long silence fell. Then, without warning, a single rifle shot cracked from the trees. The girls screamed. The horses reared. Warriors drew spears. The lawman ducked. The rider ran to shield her. The keeper shouted, Unknown shooter, behind the ridge. No one knew if the bullet was aimed at the girl, the rider, the lawman, or the truth itself. The rifle shot echoed through the valley like steel-tearing sky. Everyone dropped low, backs pressed to earth, breath held tight. The lawman shouted, Hold fire! Hold fire! No second shot came. The rider whispered, That wasn't warning. That was aim. The keeper signaled 2 warriors. Fine shooter. Do not strike. Learn. They sprinted toward the ridge, quiet as brush wolves. The girl clung to the ground, heartbeat shaking her ribs. The rider touched her arm gently. You're alive. She nodded, shaking. The lawman stood slowly, boots steady. No one moves fast. This ground is tense. The keeper pointed toward the tree line. Truth shakes trees. Fear shoots from shadows. The oathman knelt near the girl. You still choose path? She nodded weakly. Yes? He studied her eyes. Not because of bullet. No, she whispered. Because of life. The oathman nodded. Good answer. Minutes passed like slow thunder. At last, the warriors returned. No shooter
Track small,
found.
bare feet.
The girl froze.
Bare feet?
She whispered. The keeper nodded. Yes. Her voice trembled. Could be lost. Could be scared. The rider added. Could be hungry. The lawman said, Not enough to judge motive. The girl slowly stood, dust clinging to her palms. I will not hide from shadows. The keeper replied, Strength is not loud. Strength stands steady. The girl looked toward the tree line. If someone fired at truth, truth must stand taller. The lawman stepped closer. You speak like someone older. She answered softly. I lived faster than time. He nodded once, respectful now. I have one last duty. Your words form record, but choice is yours. He looked at the rider. And yours. The rider placed his hand over his chest. I do not claim her. Not in any way. The keeper looked at the lawman. We do not claim either. She chooses road, not ropes. The lawman turned to the girl. You said you wanted a place unseen. How far do you plan to walk? She looked at the horizon, not dreamy, not desperate, clear. As far as it takes to hear my own footsteps and believe them, the rider whispered. You could stay until healed. She smiled sadly. Healing needs new air. The keeper added, Then take lesson. Walk slow. Walk honest. The oathman offered water. Begin with breath. She drank, wiped her mouth and tied her shoes. Not rushed, not dramatic. Quiet. She turned to the rider. Thank you for safety. He shook his head. You saved yourself. I only opened a door. She turned to the keeper. Thank you for guidance. He replied. Guidance is wind. Your legs walk. She faced the lawman last. Thank you for listening. He bowed his head slightly. Your voice writes stronger than ink. She stepped back from them all, not away, just separate. None of you owe me path, she said, and I owe none of you destiny. The rider called out softly, If you ever need shelter, she raised her hand. I will knock when I decide. They accepted it. She walked toward the road, not the cabin trail, not the tribal path, not the courtman's route. A third road, unclaimed, unmapped. The sun rose higher, lighting dust like tiny stars. At the bend she paused, turned once more and said, I lived in fear, then in rescue. Now I walk in choice. None followed, none begged, none directed. She walked until voices faded, then until hoofprints ended, then until only her footprints remained. A crow called overhead, not omen, just witness. She whispered to herself, My life continues, because I continue it, and she walked on. No legend claimed her, no group defined her, no paper owned her. Just a human life carried forward. The end,